just tell us when we're live. Super. Hey everyone, welcome to AMA number 46. It's the 25th of May 2021, and we have, let me open on the screen, we have Eric Harris-Braun. Hey Eric. And let me get Eric, what you're the co-founder and chief engineering officer, is that right?
Well, we don't do a lot of officiating around here, but I hold a lot of the engineering side of things, landing it, make it actually make things actually work.
All right, well, good to have you again, and Art Brock, co-founder and CTO. All right, let's get into it. So Mary is off on holidays this week, and so we thought it'd be great to have Art and Eric on board and answering some technical questions, and hopefully riffing on some interesting stuff as well. And if you have any questions while we're live, please jump in and ask them, and if we can slot them in, we will do. All right, quick go. Just got a ping that we've lost 25 people in the first minute of our audience. So maybe there was something in the introduction that people weren't so happy with. Let's see. Well, they missed out on the most exciting thing that's happening today. Is I was actually on a demo of Elemental Chess, which should hopefully roll out as part of the Holo hosting network after Elemental Chat. But yeah, it's fantastically cool, and we had Eduardo and Guillem on an ecosystem session playing around with that today. So that was super exciting, and that kind of moves into my thank you, which is really for all the people that have been building, playing with Holochain for the last couple of years, building, giving their time, staking their careers, etc., on this technology. It's just thank you for your commitment. And when I see the smiles on people's faces now on what they're able to create in such a short period of time, it's pretty cool and very, very rewarding. So I'm looking forward to a lot more of that in the next few months. It's super exciting stuff. Okay, so that is my update, and then it bridges really nicely into the first question for Eric, which is how is hosted Elemental Chat testing going?
Well, so from my vantage point, Elemental Chat testing is going incredibly well because of what that means to me. For testing to go well, what that means is that we've got a framework in place that rigorously tests the software so that we can get back strong results. It doesn't mean that the tests are all passing, because that's less important. We know that they won't pass. So, and especially a system that is as complicated as Holo hosting, which has all these parts of integrating domain name servers and coordinating with your browser tab and opening up connections to the HoloPort and making sure that the private keys are stored in the browser and that are opening up the different, it's just like there's a lot of complexity. And so what we've got going is really good cycles between the devs testing that happens, then it gets passed over to our internal testing, then it gets passed to the community testing, and we keep seeing bugs, lots of them, but they're like usually pretty easy to solve. It's like, oh, okay, we see that. Oh, I get why that didn't work. And that's the way it should feel. It's none of this is head scratchy. The one thing I do want to note about this is that as it goes public, one of the things we have is joining codes that we're going to roll out slowly. So as it goes public, which will hopefully happen relatively soon, people will be getting joining codes, and that way we can grow the system slowly instead of having it be hammered by lots of people and having it be shut down. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
Super, thanks, Eric. I just got another ping that there's about 400 people watching, and I thought, I know we've got a lot of questions to get through, but I'm sure of those 400, there are a lot of people that are quite new to our world. So could you give us like 60 seconds on what Elemental Chat actually is and why it's exciting?
Yeah. So Elemental Chat is a chat app, right? So a chat app where you can chat from one user to another. It's kind of similar to WhatsApp or Signal. But the thing about it is that it's running fully distributedly all across all the different machines that are hosting it, instead of with any centralized server. And it's a great system to be testing Holochain because it includes loading up data that's shared across all these different systems when you when you like look at all the channel list and look at the back history. And it includes real-time signalings, which is one of the key components that's available in the Holochain network, where an application can send a signal directly to another node that's online. And that works as well as it does in a distributed system, for the feeling of being able to chat with somebody real time is quite an achievement, and we're quite pleased with it. I honestly, I didn't think we were going to be able to do that early on. We had a lot of stuff about real-time systems. It might be difficult, but it's working beautifully.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. Thanks. Hopefully, yeah, for those of you who are new and you want to find out more, I think the guys will put in links to the various social channels that can describe a little bit more about what Elemental Chat is. And I'm pretty sure you can sign up to be one of the pre-release testers as well if you're interested. Okay, so next question. Am I right when I say that Holochain is different compared to blockchain technology? What is the difference between those two? And then just because I think everyone likes to ask double barrel questions of art. The Holofuel coin is run on this Holochain tech. Will there be potential for other coins to be built on Holofuel?
So first of all, yes, Holochain is quite different from blockchain. They both use cryptography to ensure the integrity of data across many computers, but that's kind of about all they have in common. Blockchain is still really in the single state computing mindset, like when you ran a program on a single local processor and you need to know the state of that. So then they spend a lot of energy and effort trying to coordinate a single state across all the computers that are participating in running the chain. Holochain takes a very different approach. It preserves the history of actions that each node does locally. Like if you're talking about, Eric was talking about elemental chat, like your actual chats that you've typed and you've sent, that kind of thing, right? And it stores those in a local chain and then enables global visibility and coordination across these many different states. So it's really based on how large-scale coordination works in nature. Like the cells in your body are not synchronizing to some global ledger, right? They manage to all coordinate together to create a single unified whole, but they don't all have the same state. They each embody their own state. And that's what we basically do with Holochain, is embody the state in the local chain in a way that's immutable, so it can't be changed. And Holofuel is just a dApp that's built on Holochain. It's a distributed app, and it's a currency that is optimized to provide high-speed, low overhead accounting for the Holo hosting framework. Let me just say one more piece about that. We're billing for small pieces of hosting. We can't have the work involved in paying for that small piece of hosting take more computing power than you're paying for in the hosting. That would be crazy. We have to actually have an optimized currency that can do this in a really lightweight manner. And so yes, Holofuel is a dApp that runs on Holochain, and you can make other currency dApps on Holochain. And yeah, that's the answer to that one.
Okay, so okay, that sounds really cool. But when will this stuff be released? So when will Holofuel be released, and what's the plan with the hot token when Holofuel's released?
So we already have some different versions of Holofuel built, but since it's really actually tightly integrated with the Holo hosting framework, it's a currency designed and optimized for that, it will officially go into beta along with the rest of the hosting framework. So we don't know the exact timing on that. We've been releasing little pieces of this stuff, like Eric was just talking about the elemental chat apps and that kind of thing running on the hosting framework. So I think you're going to see, as we're in the Holo hosting alpha, you're going to see progressive versions of Holofuel also being released. And then what's the plan with the hot token? The hot token was, basically the ICO token for the funding that we raised to do this, and it will be swappable into Holofuel. There's a 6-month window once Holofuel actually is declared live and no longer in the alpha test phase. A 6-month window where hot and Holofuel pricing is set 1-to-1, but the ability to move between hot and Holofuel doesn't go away at the end of that swap window. So it will really kind of be up to individual users as to when they might want to, or if they may want to move over from hot to Holofuel. If so, that's kind of the short answer for the hot token.
Okay, cool. And then another pretty topical one, Eric, can you create an NFT on Holochain? And if so, how?
So yeah, the answer is absolutely yes. And there's been some really fun and interesting discussions on the Holochain forum. If you go to forum.holochain.org and search for the term NFT, you can read a lot more about this from folks who are looking at it. But here's the basic story. You can think about an NFT as a game of catch with a ball. And as the artist or the person who has the non-fungible whole that you want to have somebody else own, you pass the ball to them. It's like throwing a ball, and they can just throw the ball to the next person. That's what it is to have a non-fungible token. Writing the game of catch is almost trivial in Holochain. You simply, I'll urge you to go and look at that because it's fun to read through this, but that's basically what you have to do. You have to play the game of catch. And then what you would have to do is also, if you want to monetize your NFT, which is not something you necessarily have to do, if you want to do that, you would connect the game of catch with a transfer of some mutual credit currency that is like Holofuel at the same time. And combining those two abilities in a Holochain app is really easy. It's what Holochain is built to do.
Actually, can I just add one more piece to that before you go to the next question?
I wasn't actually. I was going to ask for a different analogy to the catch one because maybe I think there is a little bit of running joke sometimes around Eric. The analogies are very clear to you, but like it's going to take me about 2 years, I think, to work out the catch analogy.
Look, literally, if you have a piece of artwork and you have a provenance list on the back of that, you're literally taking it and you throw it to the next person and you add your name. That's what catch is.
Right. Hold on. The thing is, though, that the assumption that a lot of people have is that you have to have global consensus to manage scarcity of something. And so I just wanted to start off by saying every entry in somebody's source chain is guaranteed unique across the whole network. And guess what? You can't get more scarce than unique. So part of why Eric is able to jump straight to catch is that the artist or someone can just write this to their source chain and they have already a unique token. We don't need any special additional consensus. It's guaranteed unique, which then allows it to sort of be like this simple game of pass the unique token, right? And
or basically uniquely keep adding the person who caught the ball onto the end of the list of provenance, right? Because that's what makes the owner. It's the last person on the provenance list. That's what it is in the real art world too. If you sell anything at Sotheby's, you look at all the provenance list and the last person there is the person who owns the thing.
Yep, super clear.
And having that with the kinds of tokens, right? The data that you wrote to your source chain. This is why to me it's like it's a total no-brainer. It's true.
Exactly. Since Holochain already tracks provenance, NFTs are like so friggin' easy. It's crazy.
Yeah. Actually, can I stick with the NFT topic and go off question for a sec? Let's see. And so one of the like the big reveals it seems like the world goes to with NFTs, like, but with the NFT, you don't even own the thing itself. You just got a reference to it, and then what if the server's down, etc., of this amazing piece of artwork you've just spent $1 million on? Does Holochain have any perspective on that?
Sure, you can actually store rich media assets in Holochain that you can't really afford to store on blockchain. Now, it won't help you with a physical real world object. Like one of the other applications of NFTs are things like for titles for houses and things like that. But you could actually store the digital object itself in Holochain and have that be what's passed around.
And I think the other thing to get clear about this is that some people are saying NFTs are just stupid because what do you own? You own a URL. You don't own the art. And so they're saying it's stupid. But humans coming to agreements about things about how to play games together is not stupid. It's actually brilliant. And the question is your platform creating a rich way for humans to come to agreements about how to play together? So if I own a piece of artwork and I loan it to the Met, my name is still on the provenance list. I still own it. And it's an agreement about that. Now, whether you say you want to create scarcity for art and what this means for artists, and you can have a lot of philosophical discussions, but if you jump that philosophical discussion about art as NFTs up one layer to how we make agreements, and are we increasing the capacity for us to make agreements and like see what a provenance list of something might be, that's actually really important and totally useful. And Holochain can do that way better than, and it doesn't have to tie it to money, right? You can do that without there being a million ETH attached to your sale, right?
Yep.
It can actually just be about the agreement that we came to about what provenance is, like Arthur was saying, for houses or for other things that we care about. You could say, instead of a chain of custody, I own this, it's a chain of stewardship. I have responsibility to this.
Yep.
And that's a really, really crucial form of human interaction that we're not so good at that we could be. Like, you could say, I take claim to be responsible for this asset in the world. What kind of good does that create in the world? There's lots of cool things you can do with the concept behind NFTs.
All right. So the next one comes to, since we're ahead in the roadmap, what can we expect over the next few months?
I guess I'll take that one. So we're not really ahead or behind in the roadmap, because we stopped putting timestamps and dates on our roadmap, because in a project like ours, turns out that that's pretty silly. Instead, what we're doing is posting regularly and as transparently as we can about our dev progress. And so the dev pulse goes out, you see almost weekly, things are going out about what happened in this particular test, what happened there. So, but that being said, so over the next few months, what you will be able to see is a handful of apps like Elemental Chat and hopefully Elemental Chess and maybe something else being hosted on Holoports during the alpha test. But the other crucial thing is that you're going to see regular releases for hosting on the Holoports of both the publisher side and the hosting side that increases the detail and the richness of what needs to be in what we call the console, the hosting console, and also in the publisher portal, what all that stuff looks like. And so our releases will be regular, and you'll see them coming out. It's like not going to be one whole big thing when we're done at the end. We're going to do it in pieces so people can see how we're moving forward with it, and then get feedback as we're doing it as well.
Okay, super. Does the Holochain team have any plans to create some kind of minimized virtual Holoport software for the app to run on laptops, cell phones, to support the network with more nodes?
I would say not really. I mean, you can certainly run Holochain on your laptop, or we will probably get it to the place that you can run it on your cell phone. We're not currently compiling for that target at the moment, to be able to host yourself. But fundamentally, we don't think people want to use their phone's battery and bandwidth to host people, right? Like it's like running a server on your phone would just kind of suck down your battery and bandwidth, and not necessarily a good plan. But I want to note that Holochain, even Holo hosting, is already very minimized, right? Like IOTA, that claims to be an Internet of Things platform, requires 64 gig of RAM to run its Tangle. That's targeted to Internet of Things, right? And we have hosting boxes that unfortunately we haven't shipped yet, the Nanos, but we've been testing these things on Banana Pis and Raspberry Pis, those kinds of things. We're able to run a whole hosting node on 2 gig, 4 gig of RAM, right? That can run multiple Holochain apps all at the same time. This already is in the form of a mini state, but we're not going to target something smaller for cell phones, because we just don't think that there's real use case for it.
Cool. Okay. Before I go into the staking question, there's one final one that just about NFTs. I thought we could close it off. Someone's just asking, will there be gas fees for minting NFTs? So can one of you guys just close that off really quickly?
There are no gas fees in Holochain. Holochain does not have gas fees. If you want to create an app that would make you charge fees for minting an NFT, you could add that into your app. Maybe you want to do that. You want to have, like, you can't just do one for free because that's the rules, but you don't have to. It's totally up to you as an NFT minting app developer?
Yeah, it would depend on your business model for the app. Are you charging a listing fee for people, for artists or people to put up apps, or are you charging a percentage of the sale? Or, I mean, that's really up to you. There are no gas fees built in.
If that is, you're even attaching money to your NFT. You don't have to attach money to your NFT.
Super. All right. And for the person who asked that question, if you're struggling to understand the orientation of that, I suggest you go into the series like the Holochain website and the Holo hosting website and start to dig into a Holochain a little bit more. That will be very helpful to understand the orientation behind the answers. Okay, so will we be able to stake HOT or Holofuel in a wallet to earn it? Eric, can you help us with that?
The answer to that is no. Holofuel is earned by providing hosting power. So Holofuel is a mutual credit currency. It's a currency that in an asset class, a new asset class that we like to call a productive capacity backed currency, specifically a productive capacity backed mutual credit currency. And this means that it's not someone's money that earns you the capacity to have more money. That's what staking does. There's reasonable reasons for doing that in proof of stake. You know, I'm not knocking that is something that one wouldn't want to do, but I'm saying that this is different than that. It's actually the productive capacity, the real capacity in the world, in this case, hosting power, that the HoloPort provides, which is what earns you the money. And we're excited about this kind of asset class of creating mutual credit currencies that are backed by other productive capacities, not just hosting, because that's actually really cool. It's really cool to have productive capacity-based currencies instead of scarcity currencies. And yeah, so we could go into that more, but I'm taking that question in a direction that matters, I think. Maybe to me, maybe to the other person, it's like, I got a lot of money I want to stake on. But to me, this is a really crucial distinction of something new that we're creating, an entire new asset class.
Yeah, and I think given this person's orientation will probably be crypto based. I think anyone who has crypto assets will understand the potential of something like that if they lost money in the last week, regardless of what was going on in the market. And that's the very point, right? The very point that you ask a question of what's happening in the market is pointing towards why do we want these productive capacity backed currencies to underpin this kind of economic system, right? Okay, so next one. How can the process of sharing one's user data from one dApp or one hApp to another be controlled?
So one of the things is that every Holochain app is actually a separate peer-to-peer encrypted network. They never communicate data between apps across the network. They can't. They're not speaking the same encryption. However, apps can bridge to each other locally if someone's running both apps. So like if you want to run, I don't know, Wikipedia built on Holochain and Twitter built on Holochain type of app, and you want to tweet about a thing that you just did on Wikipedia, you could bridge that data. You could pull that across the apps, but it would come out as your tweet, not because Wikipedia is somehow magically bridging to Twitter. It goes through a person. And so this always keeps the data associated with the person who was responsible for bridging it, so you know where it came from. And also, you fundamentally can't prevent people from sharing data they have access to anyway, right? Like there's no way you could stop someone from cutting and pasting data if Holochain didn't provide a bridge. But Holochain providing a bridge this way actually makes it much easier to manage permissions, and it holds people accountable for the things that they bridge, for the actions they take across systems. And so the question was, how does the process work for sharing data? And basically saying it never happens just app to app directly. It always happens through an agent, essentially, as an endpoint, as the bridge.
Cool.
Can I say one thing about that too? That's, I think,
Please.
really exciting. So the answer to this question reveals another one of the powers of Holochain, which is composability. Because of this, it means that this is going to provide a space for the kind of composition that Arthur was just talking about, for there to be really useful connectors between things under a given person's control that that actually are the kinds of things people want to do. Because when you have that bridge in your control, that means that you can create an app that assembles those different things together and allows you to automate your tweeting tweeting as a result of other things you do. And it increases agents' control because of that mechanism.
Yeah, it's so much easier than the apps having to understand anything about each other.
Yep, cool. All right, when will HoloPorts be released and shipped? The new HoloPorts, I guess, because
Yeah,
they've
I
been
was
out
going to
of
say, I
stock for a
think
while.
this question is in reference to the new batch of HoloPorts that sold out like in 2 hours when we opened up the store again.
Yep.
We limited the size of that batch to take advantage of some existing parts inventories so that they wouldn't be held up by the current microchip shortages that's happening a lot throughout the whole manufacturing supply chain right now. But we don't have exact ship dates yet. We were purposely limiting that size so we wouldn't hit all those delays. But I'm sorry, I mean, so that's what I'm saying is we're hopeful it's going to be soon, but we actually can't say because it's kind of in the control of our manufacturer.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Well, this actually links to the NFT question as well, but can you share maybe, Eric, how Holochain uses less energy than blockchain?
Yeah, sure. The fundamental way that this happens, the fundamental reason why Holochain uses less energy than the blockchain model is because of what Arthur said at the very beginning in answering the question about what makes Holochain different than blockchain, which is this question of synchronizing a single state between all users. That is the energy intensive thing. If you don't start with that as your underlying model, you don't get to that place. Now you can write a deeply energy intensive Holochain app if you want to. Like you literally could write a blockchain simulating app that does proof of work, and people have talked about doing that just to show that. But that's kind of a backward step, and it's that fundamental thing. Because we're not sharing and synchronizing state between all users, we don't have to spend the kind of energy that blockchain has to spend.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the day when the questions along these lines also talk about the Holochain energy use versus like current centralized cloud energy use and how that environment works as well, and benefits between those environments, because I think that's a very important point and distinction that we certainly made in the green paper and have made a lot along the way. Is we're not optimizing and orientating ourselves to prove that we're better than blockchain. We're out to provide a viable alternative to the centralized computing environment, for certain types of apps.
Yeah, actually, just really briefly about that. When you concentrate all the computing power together into a data center, you make lots of heat. And most of their energy use is not just the running the computers, but then running all the cooling systems to keep the computing cool enough, right? And when you just have little boxes spread throughout the world, wherever there's an internet connection, you don't have that same concentrations of heat and cooling issues.
All right. Okay. So does Holo have anything in place to prevent a Holofuel oligarchy that is similar to what happened with Bitcoin mining? People filling up rooms of computing power to capture a big portion of hosting market share and squeezing out the smaller hosts. Perfect segue.
Yeah, actually, we do. We do KYC with our hosts. It's actually a requirement from the regulators, and so we know who different hosts are, and hosts are limited. And in terms of the number of devices that they can run, it'll probably be a limit of 5. I don't know that we've actually nailed that limit. And then if you want to provide more, if you want to run more hosting power than that, then we're planning to be able to provide kind of a pro level. We're not even focused on that at the moment. We're really focused on this peer level of hosting, but we'll probably provide a pro level of hosting that actually has as part of that agreement that people at that level are required to use a portion of their capacity to provide proxy services to the normal peer hosts. Because one of the problems is that normal peer hosts are typically behind a NAT or firewall or at home. They don't have a public IP and port that they can serve on unless they know how to configure their router to let those things through. Some people might be able to do that, but many people will need to be proxied to be able to be reachable. And so part of what we're looking at doing is having the growth of any pro hosts actually be providing through their public IPs and backbones, the proxy capacities for more peers. So it actually would be a requirement for these larger people to be helping the small hosts scale.
Super cool. Thanks, Art. And just jumping into the patent. So does the new Holochain patent affect open source? What open source licenses does Holochain use? Is Holochain a framework or a protocol? And what language is it written in? And can it be ported to other languages?
Holochain's written in Rust and could potentially be ported to other languages, but that would take a lot of work. The patent that we're using doesn't affect Holochain's open source status at all. And I mean, what it actually does is it helps us enforce the open source license. We got it to help protect with that and to help protect from patent trolls, basically preventing us from using our own innovations. And the license we use is one that we created. It's called the Cryptographic Autonomy License, or CAL. And it's basically a new open source license. We got it approved through the Open Source Initiative Institute. I forget what OSI actually stands for. The thing is that it's really the first license that is not for centralized software, but for decentralized systems and cryptographic systems, because the game changes where your keys become a really important aspect of things. So for example, the CAL license protects that you can't use Holochain to build an application like let's say a currency application where you generate the keys for everybody and end up controlling the keys, because then you could actually take control of people's wallet and transfer their money to yourselves and that kind of stuff. And most people aren't sophisticated enough to know how their keys got generated. Some people do, some people know, but many do not. And so we basically have built protections into the license to protect that it's not a valid use of Holochain unless users themselves own their private keys and those keys are under their control. But it goes even beyond the keys. It actually goes to the data. So as we've been mentioning, you write your own data to a source chain, the source of all the data you've written being shared with the network, right? And if for some reason you've broken the rules of the network or you get kicked out of the club on some application for some reason, you still have all of the ownership and rights to your data, and nobody can stop you from holding your data that you created. And you can still run that application locally offline. And that's one of the other weird things about Holochain apps that's very different than blockchain apps, is that they can work offline. Like, you could imagine like an elemental chat or a Slack chat type of thing where you're getting on a plane and going to have no more access and you want to be able to work offline, and you could have the data synchronized and be making changes. And then when you connect again, your chats will go through. And so this means that we wanted a different kind of license to ensure the rights of these end users for their data and their keys. And yeah, the thing is that is Holochain a framework or a protocol? Yes, the answer is yes, it's both. Did you want to, Eric, you're unmuted. You want to talk about this one?
Sure, I was just going to say that on that one, on the answer to that one is it is both, because it has network protocols, because you have to at the protocol level define what the interaction is between these agents that make up the network. So that looks like a protocol, but it is also an application framework for development. And it has what we call the Holochain development kit, the HDK, which is our software development kit, which looks a lot like a framework, because you end up using that to produce the applications that run on top of that. So there's both aspects to it.
Thanks, guys. So Eric, does Holochain allow access to the local HoloPort file system? Can a Holochain app that runs in the browser read and write files to the HoloPort?
Nope. Holochain is sandboxes the apps. Otherwise, it would be a security break. So the data is not available. You can't just access the file system of a HoloPort.
Okay, cool. And so Art, how does Holo protect against hosts accessing sensitive user information?
So there's a couple different levels of answering this question. One is that all data is always encrypted at rest on people's hard drives and over the wire when it's moving over the network. So that's the first type of encryption for sensitive user information. And then on the holochain layer, sensitive information probably shouldn't even get published to the shared space, to the DHT. You actually can keep private data private on your chain and then selectively share it with people. If you do want to publish it to the DHT, you can encrypt data. We largely are discouraging that as a pattern, though, because it's, and this is what blockchains do. It's like you're putting private encrypted data out into public permanent spaces. And eventually cryptography, whether because of computing power or other things, tends to be broken eventually. And so if you've put that out in a permanent space, you can't expect to keep it private forever. So that we actually have different layers of membranes in Holochain. Now on the Holo hosting layer, even those private chains are hosted by the hosts. And currently those need to be able to be served in the clear. At some point, we may be able to add another sort of layer of encryption there, but we're currently not double encrypting these files. But do keep in mind that you don't have the same honeypot effect for trying to go harvest user data, because that's a function of centralization, where you can go get data from millions of users in a single place, where if you've got these things in thousands or hundreds of thousands of holoports across, 68 different countries, 69 different countries now, something like that, it's not necessarily easy to go and try to gobble up that data.
So do Holochain apps have to incorporate a hash chain, or can Holochain be used solely for its distributed app technology? Can data be stored on the client device but not on the hash chain? Can a Holochain app create multiple hash chains, or is an app limited to one hash chain per app, Eric?
Yeah, so the way the question is asked reveals the frame of the questioner. The assumption is clear that from the blockchain world that there is a single hash chain. There's this one global consensus. And so the question, do Holochain apps have to incorporate a hash chain, or can Holochain be used solely for its distributed app technology? It doesn't make sense to even ask the question in the Holochain world, because Holochain doesn't have a single hash chain. That what we call, though, and we've heard this term already in this AMA, is what we call a hash chain is a source chain. And each agent who's writing things, they write it to their own source chains. So there's already a bunch of hash chains. Hash chains are literally the technology of intrinsic data integrity, where when you add something to your chain, you sign it, and the next item on the chain signs the previous one. And so this is how you have the cryptographic integrity, that the data is immutable and can't be changed. That you can do independent of blockchains, which is having one single one that's shared across a lot of different computers. So the answer is, yeah, you can store multiple ones, because that's what you're already doing. And the other thing to think about is that every Holochain app is its own space. So you can have multiple applications with their own sets of source chains. So it's already a multiple space at two different levels. And then thirdly, the question is, can a Holochain app create multiple hash chains? Is it limited to one? Well, I already answered that one. But as long as you also understand that, can data be stored on the client device, but not on the hash chain? Well, Arthur already referred to that about the private entries. In this hash chain, in the source chain, an individual agent's hash chain, you can commit these private entries, which are not made public. And so you can use that for all kinds of purpose, for having private data on the single device. And there's lots of different use cases for how you would do that and why you would do that. I hope that makes sense. That this is an important thing, though, to remember. In the Holochain case, there is not a single hash chain. There are multiple source chains. There is not a single app. There are multiple apps in which each of the agents who are participating in that app have their sets of hash chains, or source chains, as we call them.
Thanks, Eric. If for either of you guys, one just Paolo Costa just messaged me on Telegram or message in the main Holo Telegram channel there. I thought I'd just chuck the question in. How does Holo infrastructure keep us safe from DDoS or distributed denial of service attacks, which is an attempt to disrupt like normal traffic of a web server?
I want to answer on multiple levels. I want to answer Holochain first and say there's nothing to DDoS on Holochain. There's no central thing that could be attacked. You would have to DDoS a DD system, a distributed system, right? Like you could potentially DDoS one particular host, like attack one computer, but it wouldn't affect anybody else on the network. So there's really nothing that could be centrally attacked on Holochain. But your question was phrased Holo. And so in the Holo hosting framework, we do have parts of the infrastructure that are centralized. In particular, we're interacting with the legacy web. So we have to do things like be able to resolve a domain name and route to a host. And domain name resolution is really kind of, it lands at a centralized process, except that's not how we're doing it. We're running it on Cloudflare's infrastructure as service workers. And a Cloudflare service worker is basically a script that selects the host based on the kind of matching criteria that is set up. And that runs across Cloudflare's hundreds of data centers and thousands of servers. So you can't attack even the centralized portions of the Holo infrastructure. And even if you did, who you'd be attacking is Cloudflare, who is one of the best companies at defending against DDoS. It's the companies that people use to defend their centralized systems against DDoS attacks. So I think that's the answer. Eric, do you have anything to add to that?
Thanks, and thanks, Paolo, as well. Like anyone in this AMA or in the future, I'll always 2 or 3 times I will check in on Telegram or other channels. So do tag me, and I'll make sure the question comes in. It's nice to always get a few real-time questions that we can ask, especially when there's something for long-term supporters that's really bugging them. All right, so this is a really long-term question actually that we've been answering since early 2018 is, what will the ROI or return on investment, I assume, for a HoloPort owner be?
We actually can't know the answer to that question because hosts set their own prices. They set the prices for their CPU use, bandwidth, and storage. And so different people will have different prices, but they also have different costs, right? It's not just a cost of hardware. They have different costs of bandwidth or electricity in different parts of the world. And so we actually can't know. There isn't one answer to the question. We're not trying to dodge the answer. It's completely unknowable, and it's going to be different for different hosts. Also, it's a free market. So you can set your charging, you can set your rates higher, but then you risk not getting matched for traffic to get routed to you for apps that are price sensitive. But if you have like some super high performance stuff, maybe you can charge a little bit more. But it really is it's a free market. So it's like, when's the return on investment for your business going to be?
There's another thing that I want to say about this is if you bought your HoloPort because you want to serve the free version of Wikipedia, or you want to serve the Red Cross's apps, what's your return on investment? It's really, really high, because the return is that this is working and you're supporting that, if that's why you bought that. It's important also to remember that there are many, many types of return. And interestingly, in this world, you can actually target your return to your values, which is not to say that it isn't reasonable to have your return on Holofuel and earn that. I really, really want that. But I want to expand the capacity, expand the range of what a return on an investment means.
Okay, so is the Holochain distributed public key infrastructure operational? How does it work? How does key management work across devices? Are data items on the local chain limited to that device? Are items on the public distributed shared hash table able to be kept private and encrypted?
All right, that question's kind of bouncing around to a few different things. The Holochain DPKI, distributed public key infrastructure, is built. We have a version, we've built different versions over time, but we've actually built a new version on RSM, the newer version of Holochain. You can find that on GitHub at github.com/holochain/deepkey, which is the name of that platform. It is not fully operational yet because we haven't integrated it to all of the various touch points that it has to interface with in Holochain and in the Holo hosting framework. But the app is there, and the app is testable and runnable and functional, but we haven't done all the integrations for it yet. And then how does it work? One of the things is that we're trying to take Holochain apps mainstream in a way that blockchain apps simply aren't at the moment. Because in order to play on blockchain, you have to pay gas fees typically, and you have to get a crypto wallet and buy some, cryptocurrency and blah, blah, blah. And that's this huge barrier to adoption for people that keep many people from being able to get into using an app. If we're trying to reach normal people that just have web browsers and that kind of stuff, the question is, how good are people at managing keys? And I would suggest the answer is not very good, right? Even people in the blockchain and crypto space, how many millions and billions of dollars have been lost from bad key management, from people just not keeping track of the machine that key was on, or the file, or hard drives crashing, all these different things, right? So we think that it really isn't safe or responsible to bring a crypto app mainstream without providing key management infrastructure. So for example, if you have your Holofuel app on your phone and it gets stolen, you could go to your laptop and revoke the keys that are on your phone so that to prevent somebody from using that, right? And that, I think, just brings crypto apps to a whole new level, because you can't really do that in the blockchain space. The key is the locked in forever, like it is. You have to actually move the assets, and if you lose the key, then they don't move, right? And so then there's these other questions that seem to be talking about, is it limited to that device, and can it be shared encrypted? We've already answered questions about encrypted, and I think these other questions have already been answered.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. There's a kind of merge one around Holofuel. So it's kind of like, will Holofuel, Eric, maybe you can pick this one. So we had one around Holofuel staking. Can you stake Holofuel? And we've said that you can't stake it, it's earned by providing hosting power. But there's another one coming. Will Holofuel have other uses than only hosting reward, like having being a currency inside other applications?
Well, like we said before, Holochain apps are composable at the point of agency. They're actually designed to be that way. And I can't imagine that smart people won't realize that and do interesting things with it. You can exchange Holofuel. There's Holofuel. One way to think about every Holochain application is that it is an API. You can't build a Holochain application without building an API. The API is what is open to your user interface on your local device. So that means people can build as many different user interfaces that access that API, and they can use that, and they can have multiple user interfaces that bridge multiple APIs, i.e. Holochain applications, and bring things together. So I would be very surprised if people don't get smart and start allowing you to do transfers in Holofuel as a result of, for example, what did I say before, an NFT transfer. That would be interesting. And so we'll see. By design, it's possible. Whether people will do that with Holofuel, that'll be interesting to see. Arthur.
Yeah, I want to mention, I think that there will naturally emerge a lot of uses for Holofuel that are not hosting related, because every hosted app already basically can bridge to Holofuel, right? Like you would have the ability to have a currency available. So if, for example, you do like a medium.com sort of like hum.earth is doing or whatever, and you want to charge subscription fees or something like that for a blog platform, you know, you could charge those subscription fees in Holofuel potentially. And then you would be able to pay using that existing infrastructure instead of having to bridge to centralized infrastructure, like for bank type transactions. And so, I mean, I think we're going to see different apps use Holofuel because it's there.
Cool. Okay. And then another one quickly about Coinbase listing. Art, we want to give a, I mean.
Sure. Yeah, we're working with attorneys and securities attorneys in the US to make sure that we get listed on US exchanges as more and more of the hosting framework comes online. We don't know the exact timing on that. There are some indications that some things might come sooner and some things might come later, but we don't want to make any mistakes around our status with the SEC. So, you know, it has to do with restrictions on types of tokens in the US, and we're just navigating that carefully.
Yeah, cool. There's probably a bit of a shout out because I can see some of the, like, again, on some of the different channels, I can see people getting, like, hoping it's an AMA with a big announcement and, you know, and all sorts of things. And I think, like, and Art and Eric, you can jump in. I do want to reflect back. If you are watching and, you know, you've joined the Holochain community for whatever reason over the last 3 or 4 months, this is the 46th AMA. You know, we've I don't know, we're on to number 80 in our Dev Pulse or something like that. You can reach us on many channels, but we're not really known for doing, like, having AMAs for big announcements. What we're attempting to do, and I think we're showing through our actions, is just give consistent, transparent information about not just what's happening, but the process, the challenges, the struggles, what we've confronted along the way. So as this gets built, there's a body of content, I guess, that reflects everything that's got us here. We didn't just go into a vacuum and suddenly materialize with an amazing announcement. We're actually just sharing all of the steps along the way. So if you are watching this being like, what am I doing? You know, why is there no big announcement? This AMA was supposed to have, like, I was hoping for a super hyped release, like that. What we are actually, it's not the opposite of that, but it's hard to have a big announcement when you're consistently transparent around progress across the breadth of what you're doing. And I do think, like, a lot of people who might be sitting there frustrated, once you've watched a couple more AMAs, read a little bit more, there's quite a lot of really, really, really exciting and mind-blowing things going on. And if you just scratch a little bit under the surface, you might get a sense of what's happening, where things are going, and what's going to be possible in the future. So for one of those people who is frustrated, just come a little closer, dig a little bit deeper, and I think you will find yourself rewarded in many, many, many ways for doing so. Art, you were going to say something there?
Well, I was going to say we kind of did make some big announcements. We just didn't do them with a lot of fanfare, right? Like, that Elemental Chat is being tested on hosted apps by people outside our walls. It's kind of a big deal. Now, we didn't make a big fanfare about it, and, you know, taking that to the next step of all hosts and all like being open so that anybody with a web browser can log in, that's going to be kind of the next exciting phases. And we even talked about that we're probably going to rate limit that joining a little bit with invitation codes so we don't get flooded with 100,000 source chains being generated on all the hosts immediately and that kind of thing. So yeah, for those that want this all packaged in the way to, like, hey, we should drive the price up because of this big announcement, it's just not how we tend to communicate about this stuff. But it doesn't mean it's not a big deal. The sort of thresholds and steps that we're taking, and the ones we've even already talked about on the call.
Yeah, there's something about that I really wish, for those of you who are looking for that you could you could experience what I've experienced in talking to developers in the developer community. Like I've been on calls this last week, and just the kind of like gut dropping, this is really working and it's incredible, that is coming from developers. Like, it's not like, what can I say? Big announcement? Can I like put that person up in a newspaper or like have a billboard? It doesn't make any sense. But the experience of Holochain developers about what they can do with this technology, and this thing that I was referring to about the composability at the agent side, that is like jaw-droppingly big, what can happen with that. But it's hard to parse what that means. It's hard to like, what am I going to say? It's a developer experience. I'd love to be able to give you the gut experience of what that's like for people who understand the power of what we're doing. But it's not going to show up. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
You just have to trust and then roll forward 24 months and see what that developer did. Art, sorry.
Yeah. No, I just want to say there's things like Eric's post about SYN, SYN, the collaboration framework. We didn't make a big deal about it. We did post about it. There's a blog post, but it's kind of a big deal. Like on top of Holochain, Eric has now built a library of tools that are available for apps that allow you to do real-time interaction. Like you can do real-time Google editing, real-time Trello board, sticky movement, like all that kind of stuff. You can, it's a library of apps that allow anything to do that. And that's on a completely distributed peer-to-peer app. There's nothing out there that can do stuff like that. The fact that we've released a tool set for app developers to do real-time collaboration on top of Holochain is kind of a big deal. And who else has that?
Yeah. Thanks guys. I think it's just a nice way to give a little bit of context to people who are new to the ecosystem, and also we really used to 46 AMAs, 5-10 questions in each AMA is providing alternate or new context to someone that's coming from a blockchain orientation. And I'll go out on one of the things I when I speak to people and they're in the startup world, they sort of go, well, the startup world is so much faster than the normal world, or whatever they call the world that isn't the startup world. And then you go to the blockchain world and people are using forking smart contracts and all sorts of things, and because there's this huge open source body of work. And so you get the blockchain world is definitely faster than the startup world. The rate of innovation to me in my time is greater. But then you start to see what's possible in the Holochain ecosystem. And I think at least that's one of the ways I've understood your piece on like the Holocene series, is the explosion of creativity and generativity that's possible from, if you look at the cycle and the gap between like outside startup to startup to blockchain, and then the blockchain world to the Holochain world. I think what you're about to see is just an exponential explosion in creativity. And you'll see it through the ecosystem sessions, you'll see it through demos, you'll hear it on the AMAs, you see it on the other places, because it's for a developer, it's so much easier to build applications that then can grow and scale without infrastructure cost in the way we're used to, which can then feed way more creativity, because you don't have to focus your energy in on funding all of that infrastructure. You can focus in on increasing levels of creativity, new applications, engagement with users. So I think, anyway, we're probably, but yep, Art, I'm enjoying this.
I also just want to say one thing that, in this AMA, we're usually answering questions sort of like from inside the company membrane out. But I want to say that the community itself actually has a lot of things going on that could be considered big news. And I don't just mean the projects that you hear about, the, Kazune or Junto or, different things like that. What I mean is if you go to GitHub /Holochain Open Dev, right? There's an organization that the community has created, and they are sharing, just like we've built this library of SYN tools for, they're sharing file sharing tools and mutual credit currency tools, and they're building plugins for Holochain apps and sharing them very rapidly with each other, and so that's already happening, so that you can bootstrap into building your app with existing things being shared by the community and by us. And we're often talking about ours, but I think it's really worth calling out. This is alive in the community too.
Yeah, I think there's 500 devs at the DevCamp. I'm not sure if it's starting soon or has just started or whatever, and that's completely community driven. I think this is number 9, completely community organized and driven. Yeah. Anyway, any final thoughts, Art or Eric, on this one? I've really enjoyed this little segue. It just came from one of the Telegram groups and people getting frustrated, was I just wanted to see the sentiment. So thank you guys for being frustrated, and hopefully you're a little bit more excited now.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. All right. Well, that's it. Big thanks for Art and Eric for being here.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks for the team for putting it on, and to the person
Thank you
who
for all your questions.
Yeah, thanks for and also to the person who wants Mary back soon so we can get our releases out faster. I'm so glad that her public persona has come across that's the internal influence that she has. So she'll be delighted as well if she's watching, but hopefully not, because she'll be chilling out. Yeah, and thank you. So AMA number 46. Thank you everyone for the questions, and yeah, looking forward to the next one.